After installing the base CMA package, we'll go ahead and run setup. We do want to check a few things before we run setup. We want to make sure our search engine is available and running, and that we've properly configured the cores that are needed to support WEM. So I've added a core default as well as some additional cores to support multilingual content. I also want to make sure the database is running as well, so I'll go to my services and make sure SQL Server is running and SQL Agent are running. So SQL Agent and SQL Server are both running, so now we can begin installing the product or configuring the product. So I'm going to go ahead and click Next. I'm going to select the vendor of the database, which is not Oracle, it's SQL. Next. The host name and the port that I've configured for SQL Server. Database is the one we created earlier, and then the password. After clicking Test Connection, you should get Test Connection Succeeded. If you don't, check that the listen port is configured on SQL Server with TCP/IP, that the database username and password exist, and that the network host file is configured correctly. I'm going to click OK and go to the next step. The next step is the configuration of the directory server. In this example, we're going to be using the embedded directory server. Later, we'll take a look at configuring additional LDAP servers such as Microsoft Active Directory or Open LDAP. But for this example, we're going to be using the embedded directory server that comes with the product. I'll click Next, and I'll put in the username that I wish to use. This username will be created for us, and I'm going to put the admin password and email. And then I'll click Next. I'll select the default port for the WEM server. I'm going to use the default working directory. If this is to support clustering, we need to have a network mounted directory that is accessible from all nodes of the cluster. So that could be an NFS mount or another network mount. I'm going to set the SMTP host for notification. And I'll put the notification address, which is the address that will be used to send the email for workflow notifications. Then I'll click Next. I will configure Solar Search now, and I'll put in the host name, in this case localhost, and I'm going to test the connection. I should get Test Connection Succeeded. If it doesn't succeed, make sure that Solar is running, make sure that your network is configured, and make sure that you're using the correct Solar schema available in the WEM install path. I'll click Next, and then I'll go ahead and commit the changes. Once the configuration is complete, it'll give you a message indicating the vgnsetup is completed. It also gives us some instructions on how to restart the Node Manager, admin server, and the WEM server itself. And that's done here under the bin directory. There's a script in there, restart WEM services, and we can right-click that and run it as administrator. And that's going to simply stop the cluster, which is the WEM server. It will also stop the admin server and the Node Manager and then restart everything in the reverse order. Once the vgnsetup is complete and you've restarted all of the services, check the status of the WEM server by going to the WEM server port. 27110 in this case, and accessing the content workspace. We're going to log in with the user that we created during the installation process that is now stored in the runtime services environment. And we want to make sure that the console is working. I can see the welcome page, I can see the sites tab, the types tab, folders, categories, and tasks. After we configure dynamic site or dynamic portal, we'll see the presentation tab, and we will also be able to see the sample site. Right now there are no sites. So this validates the WEM installation at this point. The next step post-install is to activate media services and DSM. We'll do that in the next step.